Paladin in Phase 1 has been solid. Maybe not quite as high on the damage meters as some people was hoping, or as they looked like they was going to be in the first week or so, but still been an all-round enjoyable experience. Retribution probably being a highlight for me in Phase 1, but what are they going to be like in Phase 2? Well, I've said it in the past couple of videos where we've looked at Mage and we've looked at Druid. You may be like me and you've leveled multiple characters in Phase 1 and you're just not quite sure which one to take into Phase 2 to get to level 40 first. Well, I'm going to give you a breakdown of any key abilities that you're going to gain on your way to level 40, which are just going to come from the trainer, some key talents that are now going to be available for each spec, what runes you're going to have available on your belt and your boots. Now, we know there's been head runes and even wrist runes that have been data mined, but we know Blizzard previewed some belt and boot runes, so we know those two slots are definitely going to be available, so we're only going to have a look at the runes that have been data mined for those two slots. And looking through all the classes, all of these runes make sense. We're also going to look if there's any big key items that might sway your decision in going Paladin in Phase 2, what you're going to be able to get from professions for your class, and just how I think they're going to perform at level 40. Before we get into the abilities, remember, if you want the fastest way to level 40 in Phase 2, grab yourself a Rested XP guide. There's links in the pinned comment and the description. It's an affiliate link, so any guide you buy goes towards supporting the channel, so thanks very much. Enjoy. So now, starting with the abilities, I'll be completely honest, as a Paladin, the toolkit don't expand that much. You're going to get a lot of good utility abilities that are going to help your party or your raid, but in terms of actual personal gain, you're going to get new ranks of heals, of course, you're going to get new ranks of different seals, but there's nothing massively exciting that you're going to get like when we looked at Druid and Mage. And most of the reason for that is you've got the key abilities already for each spec that you play. But you are going to get Blessing of Salvation at level 26, and this is probably going to be one of the go-to blessings that a lot of people in your raid are going to want, so get used to spamming it in Pally Power. As you make your way to level 40, you're going to start unlocking the Resistance auras as well, so you're going to get Shadow at level 28, you're going to get Frost Resistance at level 32, and then you're going to get Fire Resistance at level 36. You're going to get Divine Intervention, which is on a massive 1-hour cooldown in Classic. The biggest one, quite honestly, for me would be Divine Shield. So up until this point, you've only had Divine Protection, where you're immune to physical attacks and spells, but during the time you cannot attack or do any physical abilities. Well, now you're going to have Divine Shield, you can actually attack. It does increase the time between your attacks by 100%, but ultimately it's 10 seconds where you can take no damage, but you can still now deal damage. You're also going to get 2 new seals, so you're now going to get Seal of Light, which gives you a chance of healing yourself while you've got this on, and Seal of Wisdom, which has a chance of restoring mana when you've got it on. But I don't think either of these are going to be as useful as they are in, let's say, Classic era, because of the access to the seals you've got and the ways of getting mana back anyway. So while they still may be used for soloing content, like if you was a Protection Paladin, soloing dungeons, you might switch to these occasionally, but I don't think they're going to see as much use in Season of Discovery as they would have in Classic era. But whilst everyone gets their mount at level 40, you get your very own Warhorse. So yes, at level 40, you will be able to summon your Paladin-specific mount. If you're Holy, you might be interested in Blessing of Light, which you're going to get at 40 as well. But I don't really think anyone's going to want Blessing of Light on them when you could put something more useful on them. I thought it was worth a mention. But quite honestly, outside of that, there's not really anything worth mentioning. Now, for talents as a Holy Paladin, you are now going to be able to get all 5 points in Illumination. So whenever you crit now, you are going to get the mana cost of the spell back. Up until this point, as a Holy Paladin, you would only have 1 point in this, making it so RNG, it's fairly lackluster. You're also going to get Divine Favor, where you can now every 2 minutes guarantee a nice big crit on your Holy Light. You can use Holy Shock and Flash of Light as well, but really, you're going to do a big Holy Light. But honestly, outside of increasing the duration of your judgments, or even just getting some more crit, the big one's going to be Holy Shock, where on a 30-second cooldown, you can blast the target with Holy Energy, causing 204 to 220 Holy damage, or 204 to 220 healing to an ally. Now, obviously, this is instant cast. It's got a long cooldown, but there are going to be ways that you can reset that cooldown, which we'll get into shortly when we look at the runes. Now, while you might think the Holy Talents were a little bit boring, Protection is going to get a bit more interesting as you get access to your Blessing of Sanctuary, which reduces the damage you take, and when you block, you deal damage. You're also going to get Reckoning. You got to remember with Reckoning, it does mean you need to be the victim of a critical strike, though. It's not like future versions of Reckoning where it's just a chance on damage taken. The big one's going to be Holy Shield, where it increases your chance to block for 30% for 10 seconds and deals X amount of damage each time you block. The damage from it also has an increased threat generation, and each block expends a charge, and it's got 4 charges on a 10-second cooldown. Now, I think for me personally, someone who's played a Paladin for a very long time, you actually start to feel like a real protection Paladin once you get Holy Shield, so this is going to be really cool now you can actually get down to getting it. For Retribution, ultimately you're trying to get down to Repentance, but on a 1-minute cooldown for a CC, yes, it's going to be useful in PvP. Outside of that, nothing really to get excited about. However, the earlier talents like Vengeance, where when you deal a critical strike, it's going to increase your physical and holy damage, or even just a flat-out damage increase by using two-handed weapons, is worth getting excited about. You're also going to get Sanctity Aura, which increases holy damage done by 10% by your party, and you'll even now be able to fill out some of these earlier talents where you couldn't quite get full points in them and still get everything you wanted. Missing out on Pursuit of Justice, so you could get all the points in Conviction to give you more crit, kind of sucked a little bit. Now you're going to be able to get everything that you want. I really feel like there's some good additions that you're going to get during Phase 2 from talents, and you're not massively penalised for going deep in one tree. And what I mean by that is, yes, there's some really good things in the secondary tree, so you'd go Ret and let's say Prot. There are some classes that really want 11 points in their secondary tree for a specific ability, like Omen of Clarity for Druids, for example. So whereas, yes, it would be great to go down in Prot to be able to get Precision if you was a Rep Paladin, or even get down to Consecrate for more AoE, I do feel like it's less impactful. So overall, they're the new abilities, they're the talents that you're going to now unlock, which hopefully will just get you pumping more or healing more or a bit more of a tanky boy. What about the runes? Starting with the feat runes, we've got Guarded by the Light, where each time you hit a target with your melee weapon, you gain 5% of your maximum mana every 3 seconds for 15 seconds. But the amount healed by your Flash of Light, Holy Light, and Holy Shock spell is reduced by 50% during this mana regen. Now, this is basically Divine Plea, but permanently. As long as you've got the rune on, and as long as you're hitting something, you're getting this massive mana regen. Going to be absolutely amazing for protection paladins, and if it weren't for one of the runes we're about to look at, it would even be really good for rep paladins. But unfortunately, Art of War's going to exist, where your melee critical strikes reset the cooldown of your Holy Shock and Exorcism. Now, it's interesting that it's got Holy Shock in there as well, so as a healing paladin, you can be up close and personal, you could be using this, and every time you crit with your melee weapon, you're now going to be able to do another instant heal with Holy Shock, or help out by doing some damage. But obviously for Rep, to be able to reset the cooldown when you crit on Exorcism is massive, because it just keeps you having buttons to press. The problem is, the more buttons you press, the more mana it's going to cost, and without Guarded by the Light and getting loads of crits, you could be going home pretty fast. And the final one's Sacred Shield, which we're all familiar with Sacred Shield if we've played Wrath of the Lich King and beyond. Each time the target takes damage, they gain a Sacred Shield, absorbing 500 damage and increasing the Paladin's chance to critically hit with Flash of Light by 50%, for up to 6 seconds. In addition, it causes your Flash of Light to heal the target with a Sacred Shield for an additional 100% over 12 seconds. They cannot gain this effect more than once every 6 seconds, and it lasts 30 seconds, and this spell cannot be on more than one target at a time. Now, obviously, this is a great one just to keep on the tank, using Flash of Light with it, so every time you press Flash of Light, it's essentially doing double, because it's going to do the initial heal, and then 100% of it over those 12 seconds. Yeah, it's really nice addition for Holy Paladins. Not really going to see it being used by anybody else, not with the other rune options that you've got. And then for the waste, we've got Enlightened Judgments, which increases the range on your judgment by 30 yards and your spell hit with all spells by 17%. Now, that's absolutely amazing for, well, I'd say all paladins, actually. I mean, I would say it's really good for protection paladins, because having more ranged abilities for when you're tanking and knowing they can't miss because you're getting spell hit caps from this as well is absolutely amazing. But even think about it in PvP for Ret or for Prot or for Holy or whoever, really. Having more range capability as what's predominantly quite a slow, clunky melee class most of the time is absolutely amazing, and I think we'll see some cool stuff done with this. Infusion of Light increases the damage done by your Holy Shock by 20%, and your damaging critical strikes with Holy Shock reset the cooldown on Holy Shock and Exorcism and refund the cost of Holy Shock. Now, I find this one quite weird, because this would be really targeting a Shockadin. So someone who's using a two-handed spell power weapon, but being a Holy Paladin at the same time, which Shockadin is absolutely something you can do. But really, for there to be any choice here, Exorcism should have also had the same effect. So I would have liked to have seen it increase the damage done by Holy Shock and Exorcism, and your damaging crits with Holy Shock and Exorcism have a chance to reset both and refund the cost. This way it would be more useful just your standard Rep Paladin. I I mean, it's still great for Holy if you're wanting to put some damage out while you're healing, but that is really about it. And Sheath of Light, which dealing damage with your melee weapon increases your spell power by an amount equal to 30% of your attack power for a minute. And also, in addition, your critical healing spells heal the target for 60% of the amount healed over 12 seconds. I mean, this would be great for Holy, because when you're up close and personal, you're just hitting the boss or you're hitting the ad or whatever you're doing, you're then getting spell power, which, you know, is going to help you do more damage. And then, at the same time, 60% of every heal you do, when it crits, not only are you going to get the mana back from your talents, but then it's also going to do 60% more over 12 seconds. I mean, that is actually amazing. But primarily, I'd say this is to help your rep paladins get more spell power, because there's a lot of abilities that scale from spell power. But overall, they're all 6 runes that I would say are more or less guaranteed to be in the game in Phase 2. Like I say, we won't look at any of the others until we get some form of confirmation that there are going to be more than just belt and boots. And then when it comes to data mined items that it looks like are going to come from the STV PvP event or even Gnomeregon, Paladin's got some interesting ones. Starting with a PvP event, having a 2-handed sword which increases damage done by holy spells, and it gives you strength and stamina. This goes back to what I was saying a second ago about potentially Scottejaye builds. You have now got a weapon that gives a substantial amount of holy damage, and it's a 2-handed weapon. I'm quite excited to try it out. And there's even a 1-handed weapon that increases the damage done by holy spells. So you could go Scottejaye with 1 hand and shield, or a Scottejaye with a 2-hand, or ultimately you get both and you switch depending on what's attacking you. And then when we look at the Gnomeregon loot, there's absolutely tons. And I don't want to go through every item that you can get. I just want to talk about the ones that really stick out to me as quite interesting items that might make you want to play a Paladin in Phase 2. All 4 necks are really interesting because as a protection Paladin, the neck is really nice with dodge, defense, strength and stamina. You've got a nice attack power neck for retribution. And then of course as a Holy Paladin, you've got Pendant of Homecoming, increasing healing and MP5 with intellect and spirit. There's also access to some really nice new rings with a really strong Holy ring or even a nice retribution ring. Some super interesting trinkets which I've been talking about in every class video, mainly because of the use effects on them. The primary stats are to be expected, but the use effects are really interesting. Being a tank and reducing your movement speed by 60% but giving you 1,000 armor, increasing your attack speed as melee DPS, or even being able to remove allies immobilizing effects and making them immune for 5 seconds. Now they're all on a 10-minute cooldown, but they are just super interesting trinkets no matter what spec you are. For retribution or even protection, it will be amazing for having access to a belt that not only gives absurd amounts of strength and stamina, it gives you weapon skill with 2-handed axes, swords and maces. Being able to get weapon skill this early is just huge. And as I say, I would use this as either protection or retribution. And the thing that I absolutely love about the plate healing gear is the fact that they know it's only going to be a Paladin that uses it, though they've made Paladin specific set bonuses. So the 2 set's going to increase damage and healing done by 12, but the 3 set increases the critical hit chance of Holy Shock by 2%. There's a lot of emphasis being put on Holy Shock, both from runes and from gear. So like I say, I think we're going to see some interesting things come out of Holy far more than just healing. There's even been a nice Librum found. Now, it's not humongous, but it's still at least a useful item to have in your relic slot, where it reduces the mana cost of your seal spells by 10. Now, this will be useful for all 3 specs, and whilst I don't know where it comes from, or even if it is really going to exist, that's a pretty cool addition if it makes its way into the game. Now, they're pretty much the only items that I really wanted to talk about that come from Gnomeregon or PvP, because, as I say, there's absolutely tons of items there that you can go and look through. I just wanted to point out the ones that I think are quite unique. So now looking at professions, if you have looked through the Gnomeregon loot, what you might have noticed is there seems to be a severe lack of heads in there. As in, I've not seen one. But that is more than likely because the new profession recipes for each blacksmithing, leatherworking and tailoring all give a head, and these heads are amazing. I love good head. So as a Paladin, you would be expected to be blacksmithing, and you've got access to the reflective True Silver Brain Cage. So this would be for Holy or Scottejaye, where it gives you stamina and intellect, increases damage and healing done by 21, and then it's got a really cool use effect on a 10-minute cooldown. You gain reinforced willpower, preventing silence, interrupt effects, and spell pushback for 10 seconds. Now, while this is not super useful in PvE, and while I say not super useful, there will be times when you use it, don't get me wrong, but it's not like it's increasing output. It's going to be a very situational usability But in PvP, this thing's going to be nuts. But then the strength and stamina version, you're going to get 1% extra crit with melee and ranged attacks, and the use effect now gains intense concentration, reducing movement speed by 20%, but also increasing your spell resistance to all schools by 50%, and increasing melee attack speed by 20%. So this is going to be amazing for tanking and for retribution, obviously. Lots of strength, lots of stamina. Yes, you'll move slower, but you've probably got yourself planted in front of a boss or behind a boss. If you're ret, you use it and boom, 20% increased melee speed. So both as a tank, you're going to get more threat. As a DPS, you're going to do more DPS, and increases your resistances as a tank, which is where that would obviously be most relevant. So it's just a really, really, really cool head. And as I say, on the basis it don't look like there's many options from Gnomeregan, one of these is probably going to be what you want. I won't bother talking about any of the other professions because ultimately I would say the majority of people will be tailoring if they're a cloth wearer so they can get their head, leather working if they're a leather wearer and they want to get their head, and the same with plate users for blacksmithing. I didn't mention Mal, but yeah, they're leather working for them as well. And then whatever profession you want to pair with it, they've all got a little bit of an upgrade in phase 2. Not the gathering professions, but enchanting's got an item that you can use now that gives you spell power and attack power, and alchemy's got a potion. So whatever you want to pair with it, it doesn't really matter. Do what you want. Most people will still probably be engineering though, which I should really point out that if you're engineering and you're a protection paladin, you can make this shield where it increases your block chance by 1%, and on successful blocks, the whirling razor sharp gears on the shield inflict 5 to 10 physical damage and 2 to 10 physical damage to the bearer. So quite a cool reflect damage shield. It's epic. Everyone likes purples. But that's about all I want to say about profession. So ultimately, how do I think Paladin's going to be? I think Holy is going to be incredibly good. Like actually out of all 3 specs, looking at what you get access to as a Holy Paladin, both from runes and talents, I think Holy is going to be super, super strong. Does it really matter? You know, and I don't mean that in a super negative way, but the content like Gnomeregan after the first clear, not going to be difficult. Once you work out the tactics, probably not going to matter what healer you've got. So it's probably a lot more relevant on, are they going to be good tanks? Are they going to be good DPS? I think Protection's getting really, really cool stuff as well, with basically eliminating mana issues with Guarded by the Light, getting spell hit capped and increasing the range on judgments, and then obviously being able to get all the way down to Holy Shield. Yeah, I think Protection's going to be in a really, really good spot and potentially a really, really strong tank. The only thing that does suck is to get Holy Shield, you're not going to be able to have Consecrate, which is going to gimp your AoE tanking a bit, but I don't think it's going to matter. And then Retribution. I think in Phase 2, it's just building on what is already a fun and quite rewarding spec to play. I honestly don't think the runes got me super excited about Retribution, but Sheath of Light's going to be cool. Art of War is absolutely amazing. I think I'd have liked to have seen on Art of War that if it's going to reset Exorcism, your next Exorcism would be free or something like that, just to help with mana. But overall, Paladin in a really good spot. If you're looking forward to playing a Paladin in Phase 2, hopefully none of this put you off and it only got you more excited. And if you've got a Paladin and you wasn't sure whether to main it or not, maybe now you know. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to like and subscribe. Check out the rest of XP links in the description and the pinned comment. I'll see you on the next one.